We're all about turning a crappy situation into something positive.
$250,000 of credit
I
card debt.
still remember the day when no one turned up.
Throw it in the garbage and start from scratch.
I could give myself a chance, so I started something.
I mean, I think that counts as from poop to gold.
Welcome back to From Poop to Gold. I'm your co-host, Benton Crane, and today I'm joined by Shaun McKnight. Welcome to the show, Shaun.
Thanks for having me, Benton. I appreciate it.
Shaun is one of the original creators of Cute Girl Hairstyles, a YouTube channel that has been running for many years.
Yeah, 10 years. Mm-hmm.
Holy smokes,
I know.
a full decade.
I know.
I
Yeah.
can't believe that.
I know, it's crazy.
And so now it's evolved into more than just that, right? Mm-hmm. You're now managing 6 channels.
6 channels, yeah. Mm-hmm.
15.5 million subscribers.
In total.
And 2.6 billion views.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That is so
That's
many.
a lot, yeah.
That is amazing.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so of course we're going to dive into your backstory. We want to hear all about this. But first, paint a little more of a picture for the listeners about what it is you guys are currently doing, what your goals are, and what your strategy is. And then we'll go to the backstory.
I think being conservative and some of the older people on YouTube, we feel like grandparents on YouTube when we see our peers in that upper echelon at the YouTube events. And so we think of things differently. We were very conservative early on. We didn't take brand deals for the first 4 years because we were afraid people would feel like we sold out.
Yep.
We didn't know how to edit, so everything was done in one take. I mean, there were a lot of things I think we were doing wrong and very hesitant because we just didn't know what we were doing. On this side of it, now that our kids are involved in the business, we have a lot more experiences. Okay, how do we diversify this in a way? If YouTube isn't going to go away, but they could change monetization.
Yep.
And, if your business is built on the AdSense and things go down, you got to lay employees off. So how do you diversify off of YouTube, creating businesses that you own, that you own your own distribution, your own warehouse, your own products? Are there companies that you can own equity in that allow that ability to diversify a little better?
And there have been several, quote unquote YouTubers who have kind of faded as a result of changes like that, right?
Yeah. Historically we've seen that the life cycle of a popular YouTuber is 3 to 5 years. They hit that bump. It's going really, really well. After 3 to 5 years, they start to taper off, and then it really starts to go on its way down. And at that point, they're all like, "What do I got to do? I got to do more videos. I got to film more videos. Got to upload more videos. And at that point, it's too late to really launch something with their audience base because the audience has already moved on.
Got it. So, talk to us a little bit about this strategy of how do you put products into place and distribution and all these other things that you've talked about.
So a lot of other creators, they'll first start with the t-shirts and the mugs and the hats, the typical merch. Our girls didn't want to do that. They have very, pronounced eyes and eyelashes, and they wanted to have their own mascara. And we sat down and thought, that's a really ambitious project for your first merchandise you want to sell. But that's what they wanted to do. It was their senior project. That we got a consultant for them. They helped develop that. It's all their own formula. There's a patent on the brush. They did an Indiegogo that helped fund the first PO, and they sold it, and they've done very, very well with it. So with our kids, we tell them, what is the product that you can't live without? If that's something you can't live without, then your audience will organically understand that you trust that product, that you love that product, and they're more likely to buy it than if you do a t-shirt that has some cute saying or a hat, right? So that's what that's what they've decided they wanted to do, and Mindy's now doing that on her own. So
that's fantastic.
It's easy. We tell our kids to do it, but is it better when we do it ourselves? Yes, it is.
And talk us through some of the results of this line of mascara. Have you guys been able to get it into retail?
So yeah, initially we had a hard time doing that. We had consultants that worked with all the major mascara companies, Maybelline, L'Oreal, and whatever. So they had all the connections with all the retail distributors. The problem we ran into that we didn't think about initially was they don't typically stock a one SKU from a company. They like to have 2 or 3. And we didn't have that. We didn't want to invest the money in it. So we just went a standalone product, distributed it by ourselves.
Yep.
The success of the product is done so well, though, that several of them, we currently sell in Riley Rose. We can't make the announcement quite yet, but we have several large distribution deals that are in contract stage right now.
It's fantastic.
My girls get to go in these major stores and see their product on the shelf. That's really fun.
Okay. So now of the 6 channels, 3 of them are still family channels.
Correct. 3 are family channels.
Right? And 3 are not family channels.
Correct.
Tell us about that strategy.
Well, I felt like, we only had so much bandwidth to film and edit. At that time when we started all three of those channels, I was doing it myself. And I didn't have enough time to take on more, but I wanted to have another revenue stream. So I felt like if we could create a channel, mentor some contributors on an independent contractor status, we pay them, they upload the videos. Brand deals would come in, we share with them a significant portion of that revenue, more than they could get on their own. And that channel, we would push to it. So it'd have an audience. And I felt like if we did that, we could generate, another channel that's generating revenue on its own, profit, and so forth.
Kind of creating an ecosystem.
Kind of. That was the intent. And out of the three, one of them's done very well. The other two, it's harder when it's not you doing it. People come in, they take my tips and everything, and they implement it on their own channel. And then after 6 months, they're like, oh, I'm just going to, because I'm making more on my own channel now, I'm going to drop off. So that was kind of a little bit of a challenge for us. Worth trying. We do have one of those channels that just passed 1 million, which is, pretty rare. So we were excited about that.
That's phenomenal. Let's shift gears a little bit. I want to dive into your background. So from my experience, all successful people have to overcome some pretty serious challenges to become successful. I want to know if there's a point in your life or in your career where you faced something that at the time just felt insurmountable, but it later kind of ended up becoming this pivotal moment that shaped who you became.
I had a really good career before. I was working for a NASDAQ listed company as executive director or director of business development. I was traveling overseas, opening subsidiaries for them. It was a dream job. It paid pretty well, but I had a large family, right? And we wanted to adopt a child. So we adopted Daxton. And in order to do that, because it's expensive, we took out a second mortgage, okay? A couple years later, we decided to adopt again so that he didn't feel alone as an adopted child. And when we did, we found out at birth, when we were going to pick her up, that she had 3 heart defects. And the doctor sat us down and said, you can walk away. You don't have to take this child. There could be long-term care. It could be very expensive. Why don't you talk about it and I'll come in and you kind of let me know what you think. So we sat there together. YouTube's running, it's part of our lives at that point. We weren't ready to share this story to people, but we thought this is serious, but this is our child. She's supposed to be in our home, right? And so we kind of said a quick prayer. On the count of 3, we both said our answer, and we were scared that one of us was going to say no, but we just felt that was the fairest way to do it. On count of 3, we both said, yes, we want this child.
Can you help give the context of tell us enough about how the adoption process works so that we know how far into the process you are with her.
So I believe for her, we matched with the mother 3 months before birth.
Okay.
So we were communicating with the mom. We had hired a social worker to kind of help her with the process of knowing she was going to give the child up for adoption, and had an attorney involved. So there was a lot of costs involved leading up to that point. But it's more the emotional thing. You're seeing pictures of the mom. She's calling and telling how the doctor's visits go. So you feel very invested in this child. And she called us and told us the baby, I'm on the way to the hospital. I'm in the ambulance, get on a plane. And so we hopped on a plane to go to Pennsylvania. And by the time we got to the hospital, I think Paisley was 10 hours old. But it was a little disheartening to go in there and not see her in the NICU. And where is she? And because we weren't the adoptive parents yet, the doctor couldn't tell us anything. And he was just like, oh, yeah.
You just have no idea.
You'll have to talk to the birth mom about that. We're like, what's going on? She was in the shower. The doctor came back in. He's like, well, I know you are going to adopt. I'll tell you that there's these heart conditions. And it was like our world got turned upside down a little bit. But, through our faith and what we believed and the amount of love we felt like we already had for her, because we'd held her, a couple times before she wasn't in the NICU, we knew she was supposed to be in our home. But we didn't know yet what the full diagnosis was. And that doctor was shocked that we were so resolute about still adopting her, had no idea how we were going to pay for whatever care she needed. Now, when we finally got the diagnosis, there were 3 heart conditions that she had. Not super severe, but any combination of 2 of those could cause problems. Some of them she could grow out of, but there would be tests we'd have to do every year. My salary was great, but it wasn't, I had a big family.
Right.
For the next couple of years, we'd go to the doctor and there was these fees and these costs and whatever. But it was never an issue at that point because the money we were making on YouTube was enough to cover those things and pay off the adoption for her and her brother. So we felt like that was a tough point in our lives where we had to make a really tough decision. Well, it really wasn't as tough as I think other people thought it was, but we weren't anticipating having to make that kind of decision.
Right.
But we were really lucky that this YouTube thing that everybody kind of made fun of us for delving into and participating in ended up not only helping us finish our family by adopting these two beautiful kids, but also giving her the ability to get the medical attention that she needed.
Do you think that decision might have been harder had you not had YouTube there as a financial backing, so to speak?
I wouldn't say harder in making the decision, because I think we still, if your 4-year-old son had cancer, you would deliver pizzas.
He's still your son.
Yeah, you would mow lawns. You would do whatever you could to make sure you can make those co-pays or whatever the deductibles are, right? Out-of-pocket expenses that you need to take. Why would it be any different for her? Because we knew she was our child, even though we hadn't adopted her yet. We'd loved her into this world, prayed her into this world. She was ours. So the decision wasn't
she was
harder.
already, even though the papers weren't signed yet, emotionally and spiritually, she was already your daughter.
She was already our daughter.
That makes sense.
And I mean, just as we know how things tend to go sometimes, it's not always this way, but she's a healthy 8-year-old girl. 2 of those heart defects she completely grew out of. She still has one and she's learning how to deal with. She can never scuba dive. We can live with that. She can't scuba dive. But other than that, you would not even anticipate that anything was going on.
That is phenomenal. Can you talk to us about how that whole experience shaped your future?
It put a lot of things in perspective, I think, because particularly with what we do, there's a lot of recognition when you go out. There's a lot of really cool experiences, celebrities, you meet celebrities. There's a lot of, fanfare that kind of comes with it. But when you go through something like this and you realize that stuff doesn't really matter, this is what matters right here. It gives you the energy and the motivation to keep going and to make this the priority, make the family the priority. And we use YouTube to support that.
Got it.
Instead of the other way around.
Okay, so let's talk about family dynamics. So your channel has been a family channel, right? And I think there have been several very successful family channels. And I think those of us on the outside looking in, there's often curiosity around what is it like to have that kind of visibility into your family life? Speaking of public visibility into your life, can you talk us about the before and after with that?
I mean, the before was just as typical as any other family is, right? You go out and you live your lives and people pretty much leave you alone. People are nice and say hi. It's a little bit different when there's a recognition through what we do in YouTube, or if you're in Hollywood or if you're a singer or whatever it may be. When you go out, like you can't be yelling at your kids,
right?
You can't, pick your nose, because people notice that kind of stuff, right? But working with your family, including your kids, is a really cool blessing. But it's also really, really difficult because you don't know when to turn off being manager and parent, and vice versa. However, I think for the kids going out, they were so young when it started. They don't really know much different. Brooklyn and Bailey do, Camry to some extent, but the younger kids, this has been their world. And they know that the only reason why we can do what we do is because of the viewers who watch our content. So it doesn't matter if we're at the mall, and it gets hard sometimes. You're in a hurry trying to go somewhere. If a girl stops you to take a picture with the twins, the girls will take a picture, and if 3 or 4 other girls line up, they don't brush them off. They take a picture with every single one of them. It's important that every one of those girls that stop them, get that moment with Brooklyn.
To show appreciation
show
for the
appreciation
fans,
for them,
because the fans made it all possible, right?
Yeah, I mean, otherwise it'd just be hairstyle tutorials and vlogs that are just sitting out in the internet.
How about let's talk about the twins as they were growing up, going through junior high and high school. How did their fame impact their experience as teenagers, just high schoolers and stuff?
Again, they handle it really well. I'm super proud of them. They're very mature, even though they're in itty bitty teeny bodies, as 19-year-olds, they're in college now, but they handled it so well. When we moved here to Texas, they were going into 8th grade. That's a tough year for kids to move. That's identity years. And they told me when they went into the first day of school in the cafeteria that there were a couple girls that were like, oh my gosh, it's Brooklyn and Bailey. But for the most part, they were kind of left alone. And we actually appreciated that. All through high school, they had a good group of friends. It wasn't until they would go to away football games that they would get kind of, hounded a little bit.
I
and
see.
People would, crowd around them and want pictures and things like that, especially because the girls were cheerleaders and they had their high school name right across their chest. So, that's making the internet, didn't think about that one. But all being said, they had a very normal, considering the circumstances, very normal teenage years.
Got it. Okay, let's shift gears and talk about creative processes. Is there a time or a place where ideas flow best for you?
I'm going to be honest and say Mindy and the girls are the creative side of the business. I tend to be more the operations, the finance, data analytics.
Yep.
So when it comes to the creative side, I think I have pretty darn good ideas and I throw them out there, and they're very clear on telling me that was pretty lame, Dad.
Shaun, I can relate to that. So at Harmon Brothers, I'm like the least creative person of the bunch. And so I'll show up and be like, guys, I've got it. You've got to hear this idea. And I'll share my idea, and then just like crickets, and people will be like, thanks, Benton.
I think that's really funny. Been there many times.
Got it. Okay, so let's not talk specifically about creative as in like super entertaining and engaging or funny or whatever it is, but let's talk about creative in terms of business strategy, creative in terms of operational strategies. Where do your ideas flow best?
I would say, so Minnie and I actually do a lot of this together. We after we put the kids to bed, that's when we actually have more of our strategic planning. Like throughout the day, it's just operations, trying to get through the carpools, going to the office, dealing with whatever emails or projects or phone calls. But at night, that's when we're like, okay, what do we think about this? If then what, trying to rationalize, which direction do we take? And what I appreciate about my wife is, for working together as long as we have, we actually make a pretty darn good team. And that's hard because, a lot of spouses can't work together and live together. It causes a lot of problems.
Yeah, that can be a huge
Mindy
challenge.
and I really work well together. And a lot of the things that we've been able to do have been because of those meetings. I don't want to call them meetings. It's just like we're just strategically planning, and there's just kind of ideas that just flow. You know what I mean?
Yep. Would you say one of you is more strategic and the other more tactical? And if so, which of you fills which role?
And I think she would totally agree. Mindy's more, I don't want to say a dreamer, but she's the one that's more in the ideation phase, and I'm more the execution and operation.
Got it.
And that's, I think, why we make such a good team. She's creative and what I just mentioned, and I'm more the support behind it. And
That's a great
every once in a
combination.
while I have a great idea, and she might be like, we'll actually try that. And I feel like I got a bronze star, but we make a good team.
That's perfect. Okay, so talk to us about what networking is like for you, because any successful person needs a support group around them and needs great people and great connections to make things happen. What has been your strategy with connecting with the right people?
I think it's on two fronts. First of all, I'll talk on a peer level. I think it's really important, at least it was for me, to find people who are in similar situations, which was kind of harder early on because there weren't older couples with kids our age. Brooklyn and Bailey were the first second generation YouTubers to reach 1 million subscribers, meaning we reached 1 million and then our child on their own reached 1 million. So we kind of pioneered that way. There wasn't a lot of people that could relate. A lot of little kid families, little vloggers, but there wasn't. But now that, YouTube has evolved and there's more kids and family content, we're finding more husbands and wives where the husband is now quit and is working with the wife full time. They now understand that dynamic, and we can kind of bounce, well, this is what we see, this is what we struggle with, and that really helps. Now, on a networking side, in terms of profession, for me, when I go to the YouTube events, I'm not going to go hang out with the Casey Neistats or the, whoever may be, Liza Koshy. They're all wonderful people and they're great friends of mine. But I go there and I look at who's the strategic person here within YouTube that I haven't met yet. It's a C-level. I want to make a relationship with them. That matters to me. Not because I want to call and have favors done for me, but to me, it's like, I feel like having that open line of communication with them, that they trust us when there is an issue that comes up, they're more willing to communicate with me. And if there's a beta program within YouTube and they're like, which creators should we put in here? Our family typically, not always, But I know several occasions where our family name has come up and we were put into that program. Certain new ad types or new features, we get thrown into those betas.
So Shaun, let's see if we can give a couple of tips to our audience.
Okay. Yeah.
So let's aim for anyone who has already built some sort of audience, not necessarily huge, but somebody has an audience. What tip would you give them on how to take the next step in terms of diversifying their monetization strategy, or maybe putting a product strategy in place for them? How would you start?
Speaking from the experience of having waited too long to diversify, I think there's comfort in that AdSense or the brand deal dollars coming in. It's exciting. But if that is what excites you, you're really missing out on an opportunity, because you can pitch somebody else's product and make a sponsorship, dollar amount from that, and it can be quite a bit of money. Most of them are one-offs and you may not work with that company again. But when it's your own product and you're passionate about it, and your audience can tell that and they buy it from you, you're going to get much more money, much more revenue from that, because you own that product. Now you can have a 3PL and somebody distribute it for you, but there's some cost there. But when it's your own product, it's just more satisfying. And I think for us, my advice to somebody who's in that position where they actually have a pretty sizable audience, but are just collecting the revenue checks or the AdSense checks and the sponsorship dollars, is to not wait, because that life cycle does tend to be 3 to 5 years, and you don't want to be caught on that downward slump when you finally decide, oh, I need to diversify.
Right.
Because it takes, as you know, in product development, it can take a year to 18 months, depending upon the product, to get that from concept to a point of sale.
So be thinking about it early. And put the ball in motion.
Yep. And find a product that you're passionate about, that you can't live without. That's what you want to sell.
Now, does it need to be an original invention, or can it just be a product that you already use and love, but now you can create your own version of it, your own branded version of it?
I think it can be both. I mean, it's sometimes risky when you come with an own unique invention / design. But if you love Axe deodorant, and you can't live without it, come up with your own deodorant, or you have a fragrance that you love and you want to launch your own, rather than pushing somebody else's, do your own. Trying to find that product is really unique. I can't really throw a lot of examples. It's what do you love? What's something you can't live without? Like you literally have to have it today, tomorrow, or this week. I don't know.
Makes perfect sense. So where's the best place for our listeners to follow you?
So I'm very new to social media personally, because I actually prefer behind the camera instead of, my kids were like, Dad, quit liking our posts on our own Twitter. Get your own, It's because I would try to help them whenever they were out of town or whatever. So I finally got my own Twitter. It's Shaun McKnight 8 for the 8 kids we have.
Okay.
And then on Instagram, I have one called Mr. Shaun McKnight, SHAUN McKnight.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
I've got a copy of our book, From Poop to Gold, for you.
I appreciate that.
And
Classic.
For our listeners, if you want to check out the book, From Poop to Gold, it has great insights into how we built our creative culture at Harmon Brothers. So thank you so much for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe the podcast, and we'll see you on the next one.